Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Happy 2024. So today we're going to take a look at something pretty cool. This is Touch OSC with multi-connections. So multi-connections, what we're talking about, we are going to use Touch OSC and we are going to connect it to two different devices. So we can send signals to two different devices or to the same ones at the same time. Now this is somewhat complicated if you're unfamiliar with Touch OSC overall. So if this is your first time trying to set up Touch OSC, probably go see one of my earlier videos about connecting to your specific DAW. Now in this video, we're going to be connecting to Reaper because it is one, my favorite DAW, and two, because it is just easy to work with. So it's easy to show what you need to know in order to tackle the multiple connections. Now, if you're good to go on setting up things with your DAW, you're going to be totally fine in putting this together. But if you're confused at all, before you flood my inbox, check out one of those videos about connecting to your DAW. If that doesn't work, check out my Back to Basics video. If that doesn't work, check out the MIDI errors video that explains different MIDI errors and how to solve them. And if that doesn't work, go ahead and leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel, and we'll solve your errors together. Okay, so let's talk about how we're going to do this. We're going to have an iPad. I have an iPad that's set up to control my computer. It is an old iPad Air from like 2014 or something like that. That has Touch OSC, the app, downloaded on it. I'm then also connecting that to something over here, which is my PC desktop computer. I'm going to be building the template that we're working with on this computer using the desktop version. All right, that's just the downloadable PC version or editor, whatever you want to call it. Now to connect those two, I'm going to be using a wire, a USB cable. One, because my iPad doesn't hold charge anymore. Two, because it's really simple. But if I needed to, I could go via Wi-Fi. But for this connection, it's wired. Then over here, I'm going to use a MacBook. And on this MacBook, I'm also going to be using Reaper, but I'm not going to have any Touch OSC app on it. I don't need it on the PC. I'm just building the template on that because it's easier for you to see. It's also easier to work with on a computer to build the template as opposed to working in the app. Like many apps, on a tablet, it's just hard to build. It's easier to do it when you have a mouse and multiple screens like I have here. So we have these two different devices that are going to be controlled all from this one iPad. Now to get to the MacBook, what I'm using is Wi-Fi. So in order to send MIDI signals over Wi-Fi, you need the bridge. I've seen a lot of confusion on Discord and comments below about what is the bridge for and why you can't connect to your computer. If you are plugging in your device via USB to your computer, you don't need the bridge. You should be able to set that up. Perhaps you need to watch the MIDI errors video to figure out how to have kind of MIDI control over the device, but that is a separate issue. Bridge is just for sending MIDI over Wi-Fi. So we're going to have to set up our ports as well. So you are going to need to know your IP address for all of those different devices. For your MacBook, or in this case, for my MacBook, for the iPad that's sending Touch OSC messages, and for my PC, because the OSC messages are going to go to those separate places, and we need to know what the IP addresses are. So if you don't know the answer to that, well, here you go. So if you're good on all that, let's dive in and take a look at setting this up. So first things first, let's take a look at my iPad here. Okay, so we have the 4 different connections all over here, right? So we have my MIDI connections. Connection number 1 is going to be going to my desktop computer, network connection. That is via the cable, right? Like, see that? There's a little cable connected. Connection 2 is bridge number 2. That's because I have a bridge running on my MacBook. And sometimes nothing happens when you connect it. When you click open, that's okay. It is operating up here in the corner. So the bridge is now running on my MacBook. So for OSC, I'm running a couple different connections as well. So this first one is going to my desktop computer, and I'm using send port 12101 and receiving on 9000. The receive is the iPad, so information, OSC messages from my desktop computer via connection 1 are being sent to port 9000. They are being received on the desktop computer at 12101. Now, the importance of this is just think of it, it's a two-way road, right? So from the iPad to the PC or the iPad to the MacBook, you have signals going each way. So it's just the inverse, right? So if you have port 1 and port 2 to receive, it's going to be the opposite, right? So that they connect. That's how this works. So this second connection is just so I can connect to my desktop version, the desktop editor. That way it's kind of not sending messages to my Reaper at the same time, just for this video. So don't worry about number 2. Number 3 is the OSC connection for my MacBook. And so I have all of that information here. I have a different send and receive port, a different IP address. And then the MIDI bridge, you can see that's connection 2. That is the same IP address as the MacBook is for OSC. Now for this example, we're going to use the configuration default because it's just a little easier for us to set this up with. Of course, you can change that if you want to adapt the file. If you have more questions about what that does, check out one of those earlier videos that goes into setting up OSC. So this is the desktop. I'm going to set up my server, and then on the iPad, we are going to connect as usual, and now we're all good to go. So if you could see me now, I have multiple screens up. I have a laptop right here. I have Touch OSC. So on one screen, I have the editor just to build things. Again, we're not using that to really connect. And then I have the other devices on other screens. It's kind of a hectic mess over here. So if I needed to set up my connections on here, I would do that right here, okay? Just like before, set those up. So in Reaper here, if I wanted to check my connections, right, OSC, you already know about this, get it all set up here. If it was a MIDI device, right, I'd have to do that here and get that set up. You can see a lot of my other devices are turned off for what we're doing right now. On my MacBook right here, I'm going to have Protokol up first so we can take a look at how it works with Protokol. So let's go ahead and build the template that we're going to make. Right. So to do this, I want to set up a couple different buttons, and let's add a fader. Let's make this down here. We need to add a couple labels. So this label is going to be for what this button's doing. This label, I'm going to copy, paste it. It's going to be right down here. All right. So this whole thing on the left, this is going to be for the MacBook. And so we have this, which is going to be the MIDI control, right? We're going to take this, copy, paste, move that over here, and this one's going to be the OSC controller. Now, as you can imagine, we're going to do another set, copy, paste that, and over here, this is going to be for the PC. And because, as you know, I like to have things nice, organized, and color-coded, let's go ahead and do that. So we'll make this like a pink, and then this will be a blue on the PC, so that we have blue here. Cool. So we have like a warm and cold theme going here. And then we're also going to do something. Let's add another button. Make this nice and big. We're going to put it down here in the center. Make this green. This is going to be in between connecting to both. All right. So I'm going to make another label here. And we're going to call it all because that's easy. And you know what? Just because we can, let's make it pretty. Remove the background, remove the outline, and put it down there. Whammo. So assuming all of our connections are correct and we're good to go, all we have to do is build it out. And again, you're going to check those connections in your iPad device, the device that you're pushing the buttons with. Open it up. We're going to disconnect real quick, open our connections, and we can make sure everything is good to go. So the first thing I want to do is set up some messages real quick. So in this MIDI that's going to go to the MacBook, let's just go down here and add a MIDI message. This is going to be a default, just a regular little index. It's going to send 1-1, channel 1, CC1, which is fine. This doesn't have to be really advanced. You can change those as you like later on. All right, and so down here, let's add another MIDI message. And so then that'll, turn itself into 1, and actually this one is 0. Now, something I forgot to say is that you can't send text over MIDI. That's just not what MIDI is for. So we could actually get rid of these labels above the MIDI because that's just not going to happen. We're not going to send the name of the track via MIDI. That's only going to come over via OSC messages. So we can get rid of that and get rid of that. Now let's go ahead and add another set of MIDI messages. This is for the PC. And you can see these are also set up, 1-0 and 1-8. So it's just added to it. Goes sequentially. So for MIDI, we are going to be sending this via a different connection. So on our iPad, in the connections, we see that the connection that we want to be sending to, right? So if we look at this, the bridge connection is connection 2, right? So MIDI connection 2 is where we want to be sending our message to. So right down here, we don't want it on any. This is like all of the connections. So we're going to send this to 2. Same with this. This one, we also don't want it to send to any. So we're going to send it to 1. Right? And now with our OSC messages, let's go ahead and add OSC. And then we'll do that here. And we will, I'll show you what we're going to do in a second. But first, we're just going to make sure everything works on your system. So now let's take a look at the MacBook, right? So I have Protokol open here. If you're unfamiliar with Protokol, look at one of the older videos. But I have the MIDI message already created. So let's go ahead and move my fader. And you can see all this data is coming up. And then if I push a MIDI button, you can see that's coming up as well, right here. So OSC, you saw that little light up here. I am getting information from my OSC. So now that I know that it's working, now I can set up the messages of what I want it to be. And that's how we're going to test this. I would do the same thing on the desktop. So when you're doing 2 connections, 3 connections, 4 connections, I suggest using Protokol first, make sure it all works, and then close Protokol, open up your DAW. You want to do that in order because sometimes a DAW can get confused about receiving messages. It's just similar with MIDI, right? If you don't turn on your MIDI computer your MIDI keyboard before your DAW is open, sometimes it doesn't see it. So it's that type of thing. You want to make sure you're doing it in a proper order. So now that we know that Protokol is all good, then we can open our DAW. And like I said, it's the same process of testing it on the PC as well. So we know that works because I already did it, and we can go to the next step. So what we're going to do is a cool little color change action in Reaper. So let's go ahead and open up Reaper. I'm going to close Protokol here, and let's open up Reaper. Okay, so we have Reaper open here. Let's go ahead and insert 2 tracks. All right, and we're going to call this track 1, track 2. Cool. So we're going to send an OSC message that randomizes the color of this. And if you need to know what that is, if you go up to your action list, you can find that. So color. And what we're going to be using is track set to 1 random color, 40360. So in our editor here, let's take our button here. We're going to get rid of name. And we're going to type in /action. and then slash 40360. Nice. And actually, we're going to send that same message over here because we're going to test that same thing on our PC. So action slash 40360. Huzzah. Now to control the volume, what we're going to do is take our little fader here, get rid of that, and we are going to send track slash whatever your track number is, which I'm just going to use 1, and then slash volume. Same thing over here with our OSC. We're just doing track volume. So slash track slash 1. That's 12. I know how to read. Volume. All right, see? All good to go on those two. So in our Reaper here on our computer, just like I was talking about before, I'm going to show it one more time. If we go to our preferences, you'd want to make sure you set up OSC. You know, I have work iPad already set up in here. You can see that I've got the IP address already set, and it's the inverse of what is on my iPad. And I'm using the default configuration. And then, of course, the MIDI device is also already set up. Set up to receive, the bridge, right there. That's what we want. Now, of course, that looks different on a different DAW. If you're in Logic, you're going to have to set that up differently. If you're in Ableton, it's different. But it's doable. So just follow along how you would typically set up your DAW, and your connections will work exactly the same. So our OSC messages here, they're currently going to any. And what we want them to go to is something different. So if we look at our iPad here, we look at our connections, OSC. For my desktop computer, I need it to be going to connection 1. And for my laptop, I need to go to connection 3. So let's go ahead and do that. So for the iPad, that is just connection 3. And over here, it's connection 1. Nice and easy. So, assuming everything is good, let's go ahead and push. Let's select a. Here we go. And I'm going to push the button. And you can see, look at that go. We are changing the colors with OSC. This is going over Wi-Fi. Now I'm going to play with the volume, and you can see that's changing. It's changing up here and down here. And in fact, if I take this and move it, it's impacting the iPad as well. And it's not impacting the other fader. Awesome. Let's go into Reaper in my desktop. Now I forgot that I'm actually recording on number 1. So we are going to change my volume channel to channel 2 because I don't want to mess that up. So now let's select test 1 over here, and I'm going to hit my OSC button here, and look at us go. We're changing the colors, and the volume works as well. Cool, so let's also set up our MIDI message. Here on the laptop, let's go ahead and add an FX, and I'm going to add in ReQ. All right, so this right here, our gain, we're going to change this. So I've moved that. I'm going to select the parameter and then learn, and I'm going to move our MIDI fader. And you can see it added CC1, 1 CC1. Cool. So now when I do this, that works. And also the volume. I can move both of these at the same time. And if we needed a button, yeah, I don't know. Let's go ahead and let's add a new action, right? So action, show list. Check this out. Let's go mute. And actually, let's toggle mute because that's a nice one. So can we toggle mute for selected track? Let's go ahead and add. Push that button here. Channel 1, CC0. We add that. And I'm selecting this track over here, which I could change the color if I want. And now I can mute it. Now, right now, it's doing it just when I hold. So if we have to change that, what we have to do, because this is the action for toggle, we would actually have to turn this into a toggle as well. So instead of momentary, toggle press. So now if we go back to it, hit it here. Now, as long as it's holding it, it's muting it, and I hit it, and it lets go. So it looks like everything here is working just as we expect it to. And at the same time on our Reaper desktop, let me pull up the mixer here. The mixer is going to move as well. So we can mix on both devices at the same time. Now, if we wanted to press play on both at the same time, that's really easy as well. So right here, and this is specific to Reaper, right? But I'm going to add an OSC message. And on other DAWs, this sometimes works too. But /play. That's all the OSC message needs. So now if you look at both these DAWs, if I hit play, now they're both playing. So that's all it is. We set up our typical TouchOSC template, and all we have to do is change the connections in the UI to send things different places. The reason it worked for play is because it was using the all. Right here we had it for all connections. The last thing I want to show is also that you can receive data via OSC from two different computers at the same time as well. So let's send the track name to our TouchOSC on the iPad. Okay, so let's add our OSC message. And we can get rid of this. Select here. All we're going to do is track and then the number. I'm going to do 2 and then name. And then over here for this label, similar thing. We'll do track. And then this one, I'll do 1 and name. Now it's not going to update automatically on your iPad. We have to kind of send it from the devices. So here, actually, let's call this track 1 test. And you can see that's updated on the iPad. And then in Reaper, let's go ahead and call this test 1 works. And you can see it changed on the iPad as well. And we're golden and working. So the most complicated part of this is just knowing your IP addresses and knowing how to connect to your DAWs. So once you're good on that, it's pretty easy to set it up and you can just send multiple signals. Now, I always recommend if people are touring musicians, it is dangerous sometimes to be depending on a venue's Wi-Fi. It could be, not the best. So that's up to you in how you do it. I always recommend that people use a cable when they're controlling like Ableton Live, just because it's a little bit more stable. But if you're at your home studio like I am, and you really want to play with controlling multiple devices, you can definitely do that. Let me know how that works for you going on the road, because I'm super curious how people are using TouchOSC with multiple devices or multiple connections, because you could also connect it, let's say, with a footboard or a pedal. So hopefully this helps you with your production work. Let me know how it goes, and be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Every like helps the channel grow. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.